My name is Greta J. Abdo, and I am 30 years old. I stood outside the Plaza Grand Hotel while my boyfriend pulled me into the shadow of a marble column, his hand lightly gripping my elbow, the way people guide someone they don't want wandering into the wrong room. The valet line glittered with black cars and polished shoes, tuxedos and gowns, laughter that sounded expensive. He leaned in close, voice low and careful, and said, "Listen, don't say too much about your job tonight. These people are out of your league, and I don't want you to feel uncomfortable." He said it like it was kindness, like he was shielding me from embarrassment instead of placing me inside it. I nodded, because nodding had become a habit with him. "Sure," I said, soft and agreeable, the version of myself he liked to bring into rooms like this. He smiled, relief flickering across his face, and squeezed my hand before stepping into the lobby, as if the chandeliers were built for him. I fell back 3 steps, then 5, watching him glide ahead, already scanning for familiar faces, already preparing to perform. That was the moment I realized what I had been ignoring for over a year. He had never introduced me as his girlfriend at family events. He introduced me as a friend. He had never posted a single photo of us together. He called it privacy, but it always felt like erasure. And tonight he had dressed me down before we even walked in. 2 hours earlier, he had come to my apartment while I was buttoning a tailored navy suit. I owned it for investor meetings, for the rooms where people measured you before you spoke. He looked me up and down and frowned. "That's too much," he said. "Wear the gray one, the cheaper one. You'll blend in better." The gray suit was older, off the rack, the kind of thing you buy when you're trying to look professional on a budget. The shoulders sagged a little. The pants never sat quite right. I changed without asking why, because I knew the answer would come wrapped in a laugh, the kind that made your question feel silly. In the car, he was quiet. I drove because he wanted to relax and have a glass of wine once we arrived. 10 minutes from the hotel, he finally turned to me and touched my knee, like reassurance. "Just be yourself tonight," he said, then as if correcting himself. "But maybe don't talk too much about work. These people can be intimidating." I nodded again. I didn't tell him I had spent the last year in rooms with venture capitalists and hospital executives, people who manage budgets bigger than the entire ballroom we were walking into. I didn't tell him that intimidation wasn't my problem. We pulled up to the Plaza Grand and the doors opened like a movie. Marble floors, gold trim, voices echoing under vaulted ceilings. Guests moved through the lobby in waves of perfume and polished confidence. My boyfriend stepped forward, handed the keys to the valet, and didn't look back to see if I was beside him. He just assumed I would follow. Inside, the ballroom was enormous. Crystal chandeliers hanging like frozen fireworks, white linen tables set with gold-rimmed plates and fresh orchids, a string quartet playing near the stage. Every detail said power. Tickets started at $500. The goal was to raise $2 million for a health initiative fund. I recognized faces from business magazines, CEOs, investors, even a retired governor. The room felt like theater, and everyone knew their role. Except me. A waiter offered champagne. I took it, sipped slowly, and watched my boyfriend move through his family like he belonged to them more than he belonged to me. He hugged his mother, shook hands with board members, laughed with his cousin near the silent auction table. When someone asked who I was, he gave the same line he always did. "This is Greta," he said, smile bright, voice casual. "She works in tech." Not girlfriend, not partner, not the woman he had been building a life with, supposedly. Just a friend with an occupation vague enough to dismiss. I stayed near a column while he floated, and in that stillness I felt the weight of every small cut he'd made, the comments about my car, the way he always insisted on paying when his friends were around, then asked me to Venmo him later. The time he told his mother I worked in support. I didn't work in support. I was the founder and CEO of a healthcare logistics company that had just closed a major funding round 3 weeks ago, and he knew it. He had been in the room when I signed the term sheet. He had kissed me after I put my name on a future he kept asking me to make smaller. The MC's voice rose over the quartet, welcoming donors, praising the board, introducing the mission video playing on the screen. Clinics, mobile units, scholarships. It was good work. I respected it. But the night still felt like a performance, and I was tired of being the quiet prop on someone else's arm. At 8:10, the MC announced the keynote donor, and the room erupted in applause. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Marcus Hale." My boyfriend straightened immediately, like the name had electricity. He leaned toward me and whispered, "He's the biggest donor we've ever had. My dad's been courting him for 2 years." I nodded, keeping my face neutral, and watched Marcus step onto the stage, silver hair, tailored tux, the kind of presence that made people lean in. Marcus spoke about innovation, about partnerships between nonprofits and private solutions, about hospital logistics and efficiency. He mentioned a new program launching with a tech company to improve patient transfers and equipment tracking. He didn't say the name, but I knew exactly what he meant. I also knew something my boyfriend didn't. Marcus hadn't come here for him. When the speech ended, applause thundered, and Marcus stepped off the stage into a crowd that formed instantly. My boyfriend tightened his grip on my hand. "Stay here," he said, already moving away. "I'm going to say hello." He walked toward Marcus with the confidence of someone who believed proximity was the same thing as value. I stayed near the column, sipping champagne, and waited. I watched my boyfriend weave through the crowd like he was swimming toward a lifeboat, shoulders back, smile ready, already rehearsing whatever charming line he thought would secure him a few seconds of Marcus Hale's attention. The space around Marcus was thick with people who had practiced looking important their whole lives. My boyfriend fit right in with them, which was part of what had always bothered me. He didn't just like this world. He needed it. He needed the glow of it on his skin. The gala continued like a carefully staged play. Nicole's father, Richard Carmichael, took the stage first, speaking with polished sincerity about community health and impact metrics, thanking donors by name in that warm, performative cadence people use when generosity doubles as branding. Eleanor Carmichael followed, introducing board members and smiling so brightly it almost looked effortless. A video played on the screen showing clinics in underserved areas, mobile units rolling through rural towns, scholarships awarded to nursing students. It was real work. I could feel the room soften for a moment, moved by images of need and progress. But even that emotion felt curated, like another part of the evening's design. My boyfriend returned to me 10 minutes later with his cousin Lauren in tow, as if bringing witnesses would keep me in place. Lauren worked in finance, sleek and sharp, the kind of woman who asked questions like she already knew the answer. My boyfriend smiled and performed our introduction again. "This is Greta," he said. "She works in tech." Lauren's eyes flicked to my suit, then back to my face. "What do you do in tech?" she asked. I opened my mouth, but my boyfriend cut in smoothly. "App development," he said, waving his hand like my work was an appetizer. "Small business stuff, nothing too exciting." Lauren nodded, already turning back to him, asking if he'd seen the Cartier bracelet in the silent auction. They walked off together. I stayed by the column, champagne glass cold in my hand, feeling a familiar sting that had nothing to do with alcohol. The truth was, I wasn't intimidated by the room. I was insulted by the way he insisted I should be. I scanned the crowd and spotted Marcus near the silent auction table talking with two men I didn't recognize. Silver hair, easy posture, people leaning in as if his words could change their lives. I had met him in Boston 3 weeks ago when he led our Series B round. $30 million that had turned my company from a promising startup into a serious player. The deal had been covered by outlets my boyfriend pretended not to read and then pretended not to care about. Marcus didn't just sign checks. He built reputations. He made founders into headlines. My boyfriend knew Marcus was my investor. He knew I was the CEO of MedBridge. He knew we had closed Series B. He had been in the room when I signed the term sheet, then taken me out for dinner afterward and toasted to "your big win" in a way that somehow still made it sound like he was the one doing me a favor by staying with me. What he didn't know was that I hadn't told him Marcus would be here tonight. I hadn't told him the keynote donor his family worshipped had called me 3 days before the gala, not to ask for tickets or introductions, but to say he was looking forward to seeing me in person. I hadn't told him because I wanted to see something clearly, something I'd been avoiding. I wanted to see whether he would ever choose to stand beside me without trying to manage the optics. The answer was unfolding in front of me. When the MC announced Marcus as the keynote donor, my boyfriend's eyes lit up like a child's on Christmas morning. The applause was thunderous, the kind of applause that carried both admiration and hunger. Marcus stepped onto the stage and spoke about accessible healthcare, about innovation and urgency, about the need for systems that actually worked. He talked about private funding, partnering with public impact, about technology bridging gaps that bureaucracy couldn't. Then he mentioned a logistics platform helping hospitals track equipment, streamline transfers, reduce waste, and save millions. He didn't name MedBridge. He didn't have to. My boyfriend leaned in close to my ear. "That's Marcus Hale," he whispered, as if I couldn't see the man standing under the spotlight. "My dad's been trying to get him involved for 2 years." He sounded proud, like his family had earned Marcus's presence by existing. I nodded and kept my face calm. "He seems impressive," I said, and watched my boyfriend's smile widen. He assumed my calm meant ignorance. He always did. When Marcus stepped off the stage, a line formed instantly. People wanted a handshake, a photo, a moment to say something memorable. Nicole's father shook his hand first. Eleanor kissed his cheek. Board members clustered in close, their bodies angled like arrows pointing toward money. My boyfriend glanced at me. "Stay here," he said, already stepping away. "I'm going to say hello." He walked straight into the crowd, shoulders squared, ready to claim proximity as proof of value. I stayed near the column, champagne untouched now, watching him extend his hand and begin speaking, his smile bright and practiced. Marcus nodded politely. Then Marcus looked past him, and his eyes landed on me. Marcus's smile widened the moment his eyes met mine, and I felt the room shift before anyone else noticed. He excused himself mid-sentence from my boyfriend, not abruptly, just decisively, the way people do when they recognize something that matters more. The crowd parted slightly as he walked toward me, conversations stalling, heads turning to follow the movement. I set my champagne glass on a passing waiter's tray and straightened, smoothing the front of the gray suit I'd been told to wear so I wouldn't stand out. Marcus reached me and extended his hand. "Greta, I didn't know you'd be here," he said, his voice warm, genuine, carrying easily over the hum of the ballroom. I shook his hand. "Good to see you, Marcus." He turned with me toward the cluster that had followed him, including my boyfriend's parents, 3 board members, and at least a dozen guests who had stopped pretending not to stare. "Everyone," Marcus said, his tone easy but authoritative. "This is Greta Abdo, founder and CEO of MedBridge." I felt the words land like a physical force. My boyfriend's father blinked. His mother's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before she recovered. A board member leaned in. Marcus continued. "We closed Greta's Series B 3 weeks ago, $30 million. MedBridge is the healthcare logistics platform I mentioned in my remarks. It's already transforming patient transfers and equipment tracking across multiple hospital networks." The circle tightened. Questions came quickly, overlapping, curiosity sharpening into interest. "You're the MedBridge founder," a man with wire-rimmed glasses said. "I read about your platform in the journal." I nodded. "Thank you. We're excited about the growth." My boyfriend's father stepped forward, hand extended, expression recalibrating in real time. "Richard Carmichael," he said. "Nicole's father. I had no idea you were involved at this level." I shook his hand. "We haven't had much chance to talk." Marcus clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Greta's being modest. Her app is deployed in 42 hospital networks across 7 states. The efficiency gains alone are saving millions. She built it from the ground up. No family office backing, no legacy connections, just vision and execution." Phones angled subtly. Business cards appeared. A woman asked about data security. Another asked about integration timelines. I answered calmly, the same way I did in boardrooms. No performance, no apology. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my boyfriend standing just outside the circle, his posture stiff, his smile frozen in a shape he couldn't quite relax. His mother drifted closer, eyes assessing me with a new kind of attention. "Greta," she said, touching my arm lightly. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced. Eleanor Carmichael." I smiled. "Nice to meet you." She tilted her head. "How long have you known Marcus?" "About 8 months," I said. "He reached out after reading about our seed round. We've been working on strategic growth since." Marcus laughed. "Working together is an understatement. If Greta keeps this trajectory, MedBridge will be a billion-dollar company within 5 years." A soft gasp moved through the group. Richard's eyebrows rose. "$1 billion?" Marcus nodded. "Conservative estimate." The board member with the glasses asked for a card, then another. I handed them out, answering questions, the air around me buzzing with interest that felt earned, not borrowed. Dinner seating shifted without anyone announcing it. I was invited to sit with the family and board. My boyfriend found himself 3 seats down, next to his brother, who barely looked at him. Across the table, Dr. Patricia Gomez peppered me with questions about compliance frameworks and patient privacy. Eleanor introduced me to a venture philanthropist interested in funding mobile clinics. My boyfriend pushed food around his plate, his smile brittle, eyes flicking toward me every few minutes as if trying to locate the moment this had all gone wrong. His cousin leaned toward him and whispered something I couldn't hear. His face flushed. "I didn't know your girlfriend was the MedBridge founder," she said, louder this time, curiosity naked. He forced a laugh. "She doesn't like to brag." The cousin raised an eyebrow. "That's not bragging, that's relevance." I kept talking. I exchanged contact information. I outlined pilot programs. I listened. At dessert, Richard leaned in. "Greta, I'll be frank. I misjudged you." I met his gaze. "I'm not in your circle," I said evenly. "I built my company without one." He blinked, then laughed. "Fair enough. I respect that." Eleanor raised her glass. "To partnerships that make a difference." Glasses clinked. I smiled, but my focus stayed steady. My boyfriend excused himself to the restroom. When he returned, makeup reapplied, posture reset, he reached for my hand under the table. I pulled mine back. He froze, eyes meeting mine, confusion blooming into realization. I turned back to Dr. Gomez and continued discussing hospital system inefficiencies as if nothing had happened. When the gala ended, guests filtered into the lobby, laughter resuming, deals being seeded. Marcus found me near the coat check. "That was something," he said, grinning. "I didn't realize the optics were so interesting." I shrugged. "Neither did I." He clapped my shoulder. "Watching that room recalibrate was worth the ticket." My boyfriend appeared at my side, clutch pressed to his ribs. "Can we talk?" he asked, voice low. Marcus excused himself. We stood near the same marble column where he had asked me to stay quiet. He looked at me, eyes searching. "Why didn't you tell them?" "Tell them what?" I asked. That Marcus, that your company." I tilted my head. "You asked me not to talk about my job. I followed your lead." His face drained of color. "I didn't mean—" "You meant to manage how I was seen," I said calmly. "You meant to keep me small." He opened his mouth, closed it. "I was trying to protect you." "From what?" I asked. He had no answer. I stepped back. "I'm going home." He reached for my arm. I gently removed his hand. "There's nothing to talk about." His eyes filled. "I was wrong." I nodded. "You were." And then I walked out of the Plaza Grand Hotel, leaving him under the chandeliers he thought defined him. The messages started before I even made it home. Apologies stacked on top of excuses, explanations wrapped in panic, paragraphs arriving faster than I could read them. I didn't answer. I took off the gray suit and hung it in the closet, noticing how heavy it felt in my hands, how much of the night it seemed to hold. I showered, washed off the perfume and marble and borrowed confidence, and let the quiet settle in. By morning, the tone shifted. His mother called first, voice clipped and controlled, asking if I would meet to clear the air. I let it go to voicemail. His father followed with an email that tried to sound professional, separating personal matters from potential opportunities. I didn't reply to that either. If the night had taught me anything, it was that clarity didn't require debate. At 10, Marcus texted. "Great seeing you last night. Richard reached out about a partnership. Interested?" I replied that I was. No commentary, no subtext, just work. The simplicity of it felt grounding. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my boyfriend. "Please, Greta, I need to explain. I didn't block him yet. I wanted to hear what came next. Not to reconsider, but to confirm the shape of what I already knew." He showed up at my door that afternoon with the same rehearsed softness he used when he wanted forgiveness without accountability. He stood in the hallway, hands open, eyes red, voice steady in the way people practice. "I messed up," he said. "I was insecure. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you." I listened without interrupting. He kept going. "I can fix this. I'll introduce you properly. I'll tell everyone the truth. I was wrong." I stepped aside and let him in, not because I was wavering, but because I wanted the conversation to end where it started, in private, without an audience. He sat on the edge of the couch. I stayed standing. The power dynamic felt different already. "You didn't just downplay my work," I said. "You edited my existence. You told me to stay quiet. You told me to blend in. You decided who I was allowed to be in rooms you cared about." He nodded, tears forming. "I was scared." I met his eyes. "Of what?" He hesitated. "That they'd respect you more than me." There it was. Not love, not protection, fear of being eclipsed. I sat down across from him. That's not insecurity, I said. That's sabotage. He reached for my hand. I pulled back. You wanted me small so you could feel big, and I won't live like that. He tried again. Promises, therapy, change, a future reassembled in words. I listened, then shook my head. You don't change to keep someone, I said. You change because you see the harm, and you didn't see it until it cost you something. He stared at the floor. So that's it. That's it, I said. He stood, wiped his eyes, and paused at the door. I really am sorry. I believed him. It didn't matter. He left without slamming the door, which felt like progress, just not mine. 2 days later, I met with Eleanor and Richard at the Foundation's office. The conversation was professional, focused, clean. Eleanor apologized for assumptions. I accepted without reopening anything. Richard asked about timelines and pilots. I answered with specifics. When the meeting ended, Eleanor walked me to the elevator. We should have seen your value from the start, she said. I smiled. People see what they're ready to see. That evening, my co-founder called, laughing. You're trending, she said. Someone from the Gala had posted a photo of Marcus and me with a caption about Medbridge's momentum. Comments poured in. Among them, a single line from his cousin. Some people didn't see her value until it was too late. I closed the app. The truth had escaped containment. It always does. The weeks after the Gala unfolded like a quiet rearranging of gravity. Nothing dramatic on the surface, just a steady shifting of what pulled at me and what no longer could. His messages slowed from paragraphs to sentences, from apologies to questions, then to silence. The absence felt clean. It didn't ache the way I expected. It clarified. Work filled the space easily. Meetings with the Foundation moved from exploratory to scheduled. We discussed pilot sites, data integration, compliance hurdles. The language was familiar and steady, a place where competence mattered more than pedigree. Marcus looped me into conversations with partners who cared about outcomes, not optics. Every time I walked into a room, I did it as myself, unedited, and the difference was startling. No one asked me to blend in. His brother called once, voice low, careful. He said their parents had been insufferable for years and that watching the Gala had been a wake-up call. He didn't ask me to reconsider. He just wanted me to know he saw it. I thanked him and wished him well. That was all. The LinkedIn posts from the Gala kept circulating, screenshots finding their way into group chats I wasn't part of anymore. People I barely knew reached out to congratulate me, to ask about the company, to connect. I answered when it felt appropriate and ignored the rest. Boundaries had become muscle memory. He tried one last time through a mutual friend, not with tears this time, but with urgency. He wanted to meet somewhere neutral, talk like adults, salvage what could be salvaged. I declined, not because I was angry, but because there was nothing left to negotiate. I had already chosen. The apartment felt lighter. I rearranged furniture without asking permission. I hung art I liked because it made me pause, not because it matched anyone's taste. I kept the gray suit, not out of sentimentality, but as a marker of distance traveled. It stayed in the back of the closet, a reminder of a version of myself I would never return to. One evening, after a long day of calls, I went for a run along the water. The city was soft with dusk, lights flickering on like answers arriving late, but still welcome. I thought about how often I had minimized myself to keep someone else comfortable, how normal it had felt to accept a smaller outline of my life. I ran until my breath steadied and the thought lost its edge. When I got home, there was an email from Eleanor. The Foundation wanted to expand the partnership, add new states, accelerate timelines. She ended with a simple line that felt unguarded. Thank you for your clarity. I replied with specifics and a calendar invite. No subtext, no history. Later that night, I thought about the word league, the way it gets used to sort people before they ever speak. I realized how often it's just a fear wearing a suit, a way to keep distance without admitting envy. I poured a glass of water and stood at the window, watching the city breathe. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt aligned. Time did what it always does when you stop fighting it. It widened the space between memory and meaning. The Gala became less of a spectacle and more of a marker, the line where I stopped negotiating my presence. I didn't replay conversations anymore. I didn't draft replies I'd never send. When people asked about him, I answered simply that we weren't together. No explanations, no footnotes, no performances. The partnership with the foundation moved quickly. We launched pilots in 3 states, then 6. Hospitals that had been limping along with outdated systems started reporting real gains, fewer delays, cleaner handoffs, actual lives improved by the absence of friction. When I spoke about it in meetings, my voice didn't waver. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was describing work that mattered. I ran into him once by accident, weeks later, across a crowded sidewalk. He looked thinner, smaller somehow, like the confidence he wore had been tailored too tightly and finally split. He smiled when he saw me, the reflex of familiarity. I nodded and kept walking. No scene, no closure speech. The quiet did the work. At home, I learned what it felt like to make decisions without checking how they would be received. I cooked what I wanted. I invited people over without worrying whether the guest list looked impressive. I left a room unfinished for months because I didn't know yet what I wanted it to be. The uncertainty felt like permission. One afternoon, my co-founder stopped by with coffee and news. Another investor wanted in. Bigger check. Better terms. I listened, asked questions, and said yes without bracing for anyone else's reaction. That was new. That felt like growth. When his mother emailed again, softer this time, asking if I would consider speaking to him now that things had settled, I declined politely. Not out of spite, out of alignment. Settling wasn't the goal. Being honest was. I donated the gray suit the next day. It didn't belong to me anymore. A year later, the Plaza Grand felt like a distant set from a film I once watched, not a place that held me. MedBridge expanded into 12 more states. We closed another round. I moved offices, not to something grander, but to something truer to how we worked. Light, whiteboards, people who asked good questions and listened to the answers. I met someone new without trying to. His name was Elias. He worked in public health, knew the systems from the inside, and asked me about the work before asking me about anything else. When I talked, he listened without interrupting, without steering the conversation back to himself. When we disagreed, he asked why. Not to win, to understand. It felt ordinary. That's how I knew it was right. We took things slowly. We laughed at small things. We planned without auditions. When he met my friends, he introduced me with my full name and my work without shrinking either. I didn't correct him. I didn't need to. Sometimes I think about that marble column and the whisper about leagues, about the nod I gave because I thought understanding meant compliance. I understand differently now. Understanding can also mean leaving. I didn't become powerful to be accepted. I became free by refusing to be minimized. The work grew because it was solid. The partnerships lasted because they were honest. The love that followed arrived because there was room for it. The last message I received from the foundation that year ended with a line that made me smile. Ready to build the next chapter? I replied with 2 words that felt earned. Let's build.